This is, I think our first conversation was back in April of this year, and we got some great feedback and some great involvement and some great interest in what we're doing. A few housekeeping items. This is a virtual space, and this is an opportunity to learn and hear from each other. So please use the chat box. At the bottom, you'll see it says chat. You may have comments already in there. 5 people have already made some comments. So please feel free to introduce yourself. Any thoughts or you may have, you can share. Any questions or comments. We're here to listen and really want to provide as much information as we can. So please introduce yourself. Before I walk through the agenda, I really want to acknowledge where we are, both in time and space. It's been a very difficult 2 years, and certainly for Reena as an organization supporting people who have been very much at risk. COVID has been very challenging, and we acknowledge that we've lost some of our staff and some of the individuals we've supported, and it's been painful, but we are moving forward, and it seems to me at least that there's no better time to be thinking about getting people the kind of housing and supports they need in our community and finding a place for everyone than today at this time. I also want to acknowledge where we are. We're on lands of the Indigenous people and while we meet today on a virtual platform, I think we need to acknowledge the importance of these lands, which we call home. We do this both as an affirmation and commitment to those who have come before us. It's also a statement of responsibility to improve relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of local Indigenous people. From coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all Inuit, Métis, and First Nations who call this land home. As Representative Reena, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory on lands that were cared for by others that came before us. Our intent is to respect and live on these lands in peace, with reverence to the Creator who has brought us together. The agenda tonight, we hope will cover a number of key things. We're going to have a brief welcome from our illustrious and stupendous leader, Mike Colle, Councillor Colle, who has been really a guide to so much for us and this community, and so very much thankful. We'll introduce you a bit to Reena, but we'll really direct you to our website to learn more, because I could do hours and hours on Reena. And then I want to talk about why we're doing what we're doing, the purpose of being here, why we even want to build and develop. We're not a developers, and talk a bit about that. A little bit of an update since our April 6th meeting, what's changed, what's happened, an opportunity for conversation, and then next steps. So maybe I'll turn it over to Mike Colle with some introductory remarks. I think Mike's on the phone.
Councillor Colle.
He'll join us, I'm sure, shortly. I also want to acknowledge that we have representatives from both provincial and federal governments here. I know both MPP Robin Martin and MP Marco Mendocino have both been very involved in the development and progress of Reena over the years, and in particular in being supportive of this project, but more importantly, the people who live on Elmridge, who we presently support and work with. And I'm glad to see that they have representatives and others joining us from all levels of government. So a little bit about Reena. Reena's been around for 47 years. We're coming up to our 50th anniversary. Maybe you want to move forward with the slide. Thank you. we're a nonprofit charitable organization. We're here to serve the community, to meet the needs of people with a range of disabilities and health needs. Particularly, we've been active in developing programs for seniors, people with aging. We've had programs in employment services. We do a great deal of support in residential locations throughout the GTA. We have close to 40 locations where we support people. And we support people in everything from very independent living through to complex support and medical, at-risk medical supports. And Reena has been a leader in terms of developing strategies to support that community. Here on Elmridge, we've been active for 15 years, but we've been in the neighborhood for much longer. Our services support a range of, oops, someone's in a rush.
Yeah, we lost you.
Mike, are you back? Sorry, Brian, continue.
So my apologies. So we support people with all faiths and cultures and backgrounds. Reena has been active in developing solutions, not only for ourselves, but for the sector. And housing is one of those areas we've taken a lead role provincially and nationally to address a major concern. And we've looked at it from a perspective of what are the challenges? What are people experiencing and how do we solve it? So the number one thing is affordability. And when we talk about affordability, I call these the three abilities. When we talk about affordability, we're talking about deeply affordable. We're talking about people who live on $1,200 a month, and how do we give them a place in our community? So we design and plan so that people can afford at under $500 a month rent. That is a portion of the community, and a large portion of the community we want to make sure can have access to proper housing. Now, the second challenge is supportability, and probably the biggest challenge for people who have support needs. How do they get just the right supports when they need it and as they need it? So often that needs coordinating staffing structures, having access 24/7 without having someone 24/7 in your space. So we've been able to develop and model support plans that reduce costs for all of us, for the individual, for the province, and increase people's sense of safety and security. And that involves design and buildings that have high support units on each floor. So there's 24/7 access to someone, but all the other units may not have more than an hour or two of visits, but they know they have that 24/7 access and support. So defining and developing support abilities is key to our model and is probably the biggest driver of costs. The building will be significant unto itself, but the real cost is in the support and the human resource side of this. The third thing in our designs that are really important is accessibility. And when I talk about accessibility, I'm talking more about the access to community. It is true that we build barrier-free units, 20%, and some of them will exceed standards available, but it's about having spaces and places in a community and being part of a community that is accessibility. So when we talk about what we're trying to do here in this housing is we're trying to not only build the building so it's accessible, and again, that has some unique features that you wouldn't find at any other rental or facility at all, including additional fire safety features, unique elevator layouts, support programs, activity spaces, amenity spaces, but it's also about the way we engage community and have active in the community. So having a place where you're in community, close to public transportation, close to public services is essential for the quality of people's lives and for their citizenship. So if we go to the next slide, we've developed—
Brian, if I could interrupt at this point, Councillor Colle is on the line, and I think he'd like to give his greetings just before you go on to that.
Thank you.
Councillor Colle?
Yes, can you hear me there?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Brian. and Gary. And good evening, everyone who's out there for this second meeting we're having with Reena and the community, the immediate community, the greater community who's interested in this very special and needed project, which involves the lives and the living accommodation for some of our most vulnerable friends, neighbors, families, friends who have disabilities. So the work that Reena's been doing, as Brian has outlined, is well known to people throughout the GTA for sure. And in fact, as those of you who live in the area will know that Reena has operated those two residences on Elmridge, just east of Marley, for a number of years. They've been our neighbors. In fact, I lived right around the corner there on Elmridge for a number of years and went by the house, the two houses now on a daily basis. And, you know, the staff on Elmridge took care of a lot of very challenged people, but they did it with care and compassion. But now, as you know, and as Brian said, there's a exponential growing need to properly house and support our fellow citizens that need extra help. And so, as you know, there is such a challenge trying to get any kind of housing in Toronto, never mind affordable housing. And then on top of that, housing where people with developmental disabilities, et cetera, could be aided and assisted in their daily living. You can imagine the cost of that type of housing and trying to find you know, any kind of real estate in Toronto or apartment for those who need housing or need supportive housing. So this is why I commend Reena and the greater Reena community and the greater Reena family for deciding, you know, at great time, cost, and effort to make this proposal, this application, to provide for a significant building on that site, the two homes there, that's the site, for our Reena residents that need help. So there is an obvious incredible need to provide this kind of housing. And this area is very close to public transportation, which is essential. Right down the street is the Eglinton West subway station, almost within walking distance. And there's also, again, the Marley bus, and there's the edge of the K. Gardner Beltline Trail and the York Beltline Trail, which is a great place for families to walk or cycle, go for a stroller. You know, it's also accessible by wheelchair. So it is a very good location for this development application on behalf of the Reena Foundation. And that's why I, as the local councillor, am trying to do my best to get our planning staff, which is a very demanding staff at Toronto Planning. They met with the Reena officials on this application on numerous occasions already. And they're trying to come up with the best possible finished product here that would not only be a great benefit to the future residents, but also be an addition to the community as a whole. And we want it to be part of the community and we want it to be part of our neighborhood going forward, because there's a sense of family within the neighborhood there, and we want to keep that. And we also want to make sure there's the next door neighbor is the Toronto Housing Company. Those of you who live in the area may know that. They're right next door to the east of the Reena homes. And that's been part of our community for a number of years. And it's operated by the Toronto Housing Company, which is the affordable housing arm of the City of Toronto. And in fact, yesterday, I talked to the new CEO of the Toronto Housing Company, Jag Sharma, and I told him about the upcoming application and the neighboring property that might be available for affordable housing. And he assured me that he was more than willing to sit down with Toronto planning staff and sit down with Reena officials to try and make sure there are mutual interests met as this development takes place on Elmridge by Reena. So I think that is an important part of this whole proposal that is going to be scrutinized by our planning staff to make sure everything is done according to local planning guidelines, according to structural engineering. All these things will be looked at. There'll be reports on all aspects of it going forward. So it's a very rigorous process. And I commend Reena for holding these two outreach meetings, which is not usually the case for these applications that come in for new proposals. And I think that's very important because Reena, I know, very much wants to be part of the community and wants to be a contributing part of the community as it helps. It's very needy and very much appreciative families that make up the Reena family, whether you're part of the greater Reena community or whether you have daughters or sons or cousins that are taken care of by Reena. So that's why I think this is a real milestone step for the community. And my office with Linda McCarthy and Rajvi Patel, two planning experts in my office, are also involved on a regular basis in helping guide this application through the processes. So again, I look forward to hearing from everybody at tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Colle. Really appreciate the comments. It reminds me that to highlight some of the differences in the way we do housing and some of the work we're doing in partnership with Toronto Community Housing. We've modeled a support system that in two other buildings that effectively engages people in community, has maintained the quality of the buildings over time. It's just a very different type of thinking, and part of that is built on this intentional community principles. And these principles dive in first and foremost to be focused on the people we're supporting. It's about that each person, each individual gets the support and the plan they need. And so often our selection and the way people move into the facilities are as important as the building itself. Like I said, the program and the services are as more important long-term and probably more significant in their nature than the building design itself. But the building allows for it to create that community. So to create that, we also build safe and welcoming environments. So we do have a 24/7 reception security model where 24/7 front door, eyes on. We believe in inclusion and diversity. So the population and the residents are made up of people from all cultures and backgrounds, but also a range of disabilities and a range of income. From those I mentioned at the $500 a month or below $500 a month rent to a maximum of average market rent. So it's going to be a mix. We have individuals who will move in who are aging, seniors. We'll have people with brain injury. We'll probably have people who with severe physical disabilities. Our partners in service delivery have traditionally included March of Dimes, Safe Haven, usually the LIN or the health system, and people with mental health issues, so transition supports. So we have a whole team that works together, but many of the people use only a couple hours a day of support and just need to know someone's there. So it's a very collaborative model, partnered model with the residents, the tenants, and each person who moves in is a tenant and has all the tenancy rights that go with being that tenant. But it's also about sharing and living together and working together. Maybe I'll just give you an update since the April meeting. So in looking at the community need, it hasn't shrunk. We talked last time about some 4,000 people, an average wait time of 30 to 40 years to get housing if you have particularly a supportive need. For those who are financial need, your 10 to 20 year timeline, but for those with a support need, it's 40 years, in part because many of the buildings are built without care occupancy standards from a fire safety point of view. And this building will have that. Part of it is you can't find deeply affordable. We don't build that much deeply affordable, and there aren't the resources yet, and I'm hoping that will change. Just to highlight, since our last meeting, we now have 120 people who have registered interest in the project for family or themselves, individuals applying, who have support needs and who have financial need. And while we haven't opened up a registry system, they called us and we've been tracking and keeping them informed. And some of you may be some of those people, so thank you. We're trying our best. Today I got a note that I felt I had to read to you. This is a note from a brother about looking for housing for his brother. I truly understand the overwhelming interest of applicants of Reena locations, but I'm sure you can understand the enormous struggle we are facing to find suitable housing for people in need. My brother, his name, has been on the list for 30 plus years for public funded housing, while living in facilities that are subpar and dangerous to his health. Please explain how it's possible my brother continues to fall through the cracks. It's a challenge. I get those daily. But we're trying to solve it. We're trying to build solutions, not ourselves. We believe that modeling it, and so we've been working with 20 organizations across Ontario to take this kind of model and build it, but we need to build more and we need to build quick because people are in deep need. It's hard to have a sense, generally speaking, but many of you who are on the line probably can speak to your own experience with that and share your needs. And I know it's driving me to find new ways to move forward, and our organization and our board is committed to doing it. We're not builders, but we have to build because that's what people need and no one else is doing it. I also want to give a brief update on fundraising. We have committed to raise over $10 million for this project from the community. And I'm pleased to say that today we can announce the first major and lead gift. The Frankfurt family has dedicated and naming this building. So it will be the Frankfurt family Reena residence, and they've provided us a lead gift, and we are more than halfway to our target now, and we will start a campaign. And we've already started reaching out to people, and we're very confident we will raise our portion of this. We feel it's important that community contribute. It is not a government-only solution. And in our model, the residents themselves pay rent, and that rent covers the mortgage, portion of the mortgage that's left. And so they own at least 50% of the housing. So it's got to be a three-way partnership, the community stepping forward and contributing. I know the municipality has been tremendously supportive. We've been accepted into the Open Door program, which will enable us to move this forward. We've been supported traditionally by federally and provincially, but we don't think government alone should pay. This is really a cooperative venture between community, government, and the people who live in these residences. So I'm very excited by the new gift, and thank you to the Frankfurt family. Our discussions with city planning, we've had numerous discussions and wonderful conversations. We've been accepted into a program called C2K, Concept to Keys, which is a support strategy from the city to fast track projects and build a team that will oversee and look at things in a consistent manner. It's a new effort for us, and it is exciting to be part of it because I think we can learn and develop and work together. We've officially submitted a full application process on October 18th, site plan and zoning application. So many of you will get notice, official notice from the city, but we felt it important in advance or in parallel to that to communicate directly with you. So in that sense, I'm going to turn it over to one of our key leaders and volunteers, Adam Brown, to talk a bit about the site and walk you through the location and probably get some of the stuff that you really want, which is really to see the building. And so I'm going to turn it over to Adam now.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you for taking time tonight for a public meeting about probably one of the most important groups I've had the pleasure of working with and will continue to work with and be a member of for as long as I possibly can. This is an application that started almost a year ago in terms of any formal process. Obviously, Reena is constantly looking to provide and increase the supply of housing for an important group, but I was fortunate about a year ago to be involved in the beginning of the process. Planning staff, as Brian have said, have been fantastic in working with us, meeting with us time and time again. We had a community information meeting even before the formal submission, and now this is a further meeting, and we thank everyone from the city, the councillor's office, and everyone who's helped us to bring this forward and make sure we keep you, the community, informed. And I think most of you who live in the area know, and again, Michael Colle, the councillor, has already very clearly described the location. This is just a map that shows you truly how accessible it is to transit, to the subway, to the New Eglinton Connects, and to all the facilities in the area, which everyone knows about. So we can go to the next slide. And what we've done here, again, which most of you will know, is given you an overview looking southeast, looking east, looking northeast of the apartment neighborhood and the makeup of that neighborhood in terms of the higher buildings that are included in the immediate neighborhood of this site. And we're also well aware that to the back of the site is a single family neighborhood, which is designated in that way in the official plan. And so we've looked at that, considered that in terms of the design that Sal, who's our architect, who will discuss the design in a minute, has considered. So if we can go to the next slide.
Yeah, 1 second.
The next slide shows you that in orange, where the site is located, we have what's called an apartment neighborhoods designation. And to simplify the land use in the official plan, it's the legal jargon or the planning jargon, if I can put it that way, that says this is an area we expect to have apartment buildings. And we know that historically from what we've seen on those slides I showed you. We see the green belt or parks behind us, and then we see in yellow the neighborhoods area on Fairleigh to the south. Next slide. This is a slide that shows you the apartment neighborhoods that we showed you with the aerial photos, with the varying heights of the buildings, 7, 9, we're proposed at 19 stories. and all those other buildings, 17, 24, 18. And it gave us some measure of comparison in terms of what we were proposing. It's critical that we bring forward a design that meets the official plan policies, meets many of the very stringent and important guidelines that the city brings to bear when looking at these applications. We know that this is the beginning of a process which we hope to be expedited, and we know that there's going to be tweaks and there's going to be input from the city and the various staff members, but we think we've brought in an application that's reasonable, that's not on the highest end of the heights, but still can help us achieve what we really need, which is to bring as many units that we possibly can for people like the one who wrote in about their brother need to get into this building. And it's critical that we have also a critical mass that makes it function and makes it work for the end users of the building. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Sal. And again, I'm going to remind everyone at the very end, we're going to be here to answer questions. And what's important is that we hear from those in the community who live there, who have concerns, comments, and can support us in the process. And we really want to move forward in as quick and expeditious manner as possible, but also with a very significant focus on cooperation and having the community work with us, because at the end of the day, this facility needs the community and the community support. So Sal, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Adam. And thank everyone for coming out tonight and listening to our presentation. It's much appreciated. The building, as you can see, is a 19-story building. It looks a little shorter because we've sort of doubled the floor heights between the white horizontal banding, but it is a 19-story building. It's on a lot that's around 1,200 meters, which is a fairly small lot, but it has enough room to provide this type of building, and that it can accommodate both underground parking and approximately 106 residential units of different types: 2 bedrooms, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and 1 4-bedroom unit as well. The parking underground is for 37 units. Most of the people that use this residential building will not be driving. The 37 parking units that we're proposing for the building are primarily for visitors and for people who work in the building. We've been fortunate to work with Reena for the last, well over 20 years, I believe. And one of the things about Reena that we talk about is the need for the type of building that they're doing and for the residents that they're providing accommodation for. And one of the things that we've noticed in the 20 years of working is that not only the quality of life that they provide for the people and the care that they provide for people, but the quality of buildings that they put into neighborhoods. We've done quite a few, including the one that Brian has in the background picture that has just been occupied recently. Beautiful building. The quality of the materials, both outside and inside, are actually higher than most of the developers put in, because Reena wants that building to last for a long, long time. And they do not need the maintenance issues that some people leave over to other residents who wind up being owners of condo units, let's say. So the quality of the building that they build and what they put into the buildings is quite remarkable, and we're really quite proud to work with them. Perhaps we can go to the next slide. The building is in a neighborhood, as Adam was mentioning, with 24 stories, 18-story buildings, and some smaller buildings. To our east is a 7-story building. To our west is a 9-story building. In the city of Toronto, we've been working with them now to try and make sure that we meet as many of the tall building guidelines that the city has set out over the past few years. So we have been working with that. We think that we've accommodated most of them. There are some that we will continue discussing with the city, but we believe, okay, that we have enough setbacks and enough yard and access to the park at the rear for amenity space, that in fact this is a suitable building for the site. And it is going through a review process. The review process that eventually will happen, and it's just started. We've only submitted. The city will send this out to some 20 odd agencies, from school boards to sewers to traffic at the city, to get comments on the building. They eventually bring those back after the public meeting to us with the concerns of the public and the concerns of their own departments. We work with the city to try and resolve those. Well, I think we've done an awful lot of that at the front end of this thing, but I'm sure that there'll be more that will come through, and I'm sure the public will have a lot of questions that they want answered as well that the city will be looking at. So next slide, please. This gives you an idea of the background, because as much as we have shorter buildings beside us, there's also this background drop that you have, and you can see the heights in the neighborhood. An awful lot of the city now is getting developed where it's checkerboard, where it's high, low. Marine Parade, that whole development that was done at the water there is in fact built on exactly that principle. So having low, high buildings doesn't bother us. It's really the amount of sky that you get to see in the background and the gaps that you see between. The slab buildings that were done in the old days that are in this neighborhood are very large floor plates. They have sometimes 12, 14, 16 units on a floor. This building is very small. It's within the floor plate, smaller than the floor plate defined by the city for a tall building. It's in the 600-meter floor plate range as opposed to 750 that is in the tall building guidelines. So it's a very skinny building, very small shadows. They travel very quickly over any residential properties that are around. They basically sit on a property for no more than about an hour and a half before they move along. But those documents have all been submitted to the city, and I'm sure that after we turn it over, there will be an awful lot of questions. So I don't want to talk too much more about the building. I'm happy to answer questions so I'll turn it back to Brian or Gary, whichever one wants to take it over and take it from there. Oh yes, I can go through this. So some of this I've already touched on. Height of the building, 19 stories, the size of the site. The gross floor area is 10,000 meters, which is about 9 times coverage. Coverage is really just a formula derived by those two first numbers. 106 units, you can see the types of studio units, 23%, and to the 3 and 4 bedrooms units as well. We are providing indoor amenity space, outdoor amenity space, bicycle storage, and the 37 parking spaces that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, okay, maybe just, sorry, I forgot about these other plans. This is a site plan showing the entrance at the top of the, on Elm Ridge, coming in off of Elm Ridge. There's a parking entrance to the underground parking on the east side of the building. On the west side of the building is the loading internal to the building so that the bins will be kept inside. Any noise will be kept inside the building. There is a walkway and landscaping of about 5 meters, basically around 5, and as you can see on there are dimensions on the left and right side of a landscape strip on either side of the tower. Podium's a little bit wider at the base, but there's still a continuous walkway around. And there's an outdoor amenity area that that looks over the park, not accesses onto the park. Next slide. So the underground ramp that takes you down to the 37 parking spaces, you can see here. Main entrance, there's a vestibule, mailroom. First floor is basically lobby and circulation area. Garbage drop off is here and recycling to meet the city guidelines. Loading bay as well. Trucks pulling the loading bay back up into the property here in the front and then back out onto Elm Street. And an outdoor amenity, as I said, on the south side. Next slide. Okay, questions and answers. So turn this back to Gary, I guess, and let you take the questions and answers and flag them from here.
Thank you, Brian, over to you.
Brian, there was one question about whether all units are rental units.
Well, thank you. Yeah, all the units are 100%. It's 100% rental building. Tenants sign lease, and yeah.
Sorry, there's another question. How will the residents be? How will the resident be selected? Because so many families will want to take advantage of this opportunity.
This is a major issue, and if you saw Marcia's note, Marcia's son was referenced in that letter I got, and it's been tremendously challenging for us. So we are not. So the way we do it is we have multiple layers. We start with our partners. Each partner selects within their own system, whether it's Ministry of Health or Developmental Services or seniors, those individuals that they think will fit the mix and the culture that we want to create. Then there are, and we do that internally, people presently involved with Reena or in any of our existing housing that their needs are not being met or could be better met in this situation. So that gives us our base of staffing support that can then allow others support to leverage off of that. And it makes it very effective for families who have to pay fee for service, because now we have a built-in structure and supports and financial modeling. And so then we have families complete a self-assessment tool to see if they are ready, capable, and in a position to and plan for. Then we review those, the staff, our social work team reviews those to identify best fits and some early indicators. And then we start the process of discussions with those individuals. It takes a long time. So our present building that we opened in the summer now and it has capacity for 136 people, has 32 residents have moved in so far. We really take it slow. We want to build a community. We want to build a culture of partnership and engagement. We're on our second round of community invites. So Marcia, hold on. It wasn't a rejection. It was a hold on where we haven't gotten to that level, but it's a challenging process. And there are many people who are waiting. We have, in our first building, we still have a waiting list of 100 or so. In the second building we developed, there's 150 people who have asked. Many aren't ready to be honest. They're just not ready to move. They don't have the skill sets or the experience or the willingness. And those are the criteria we use. It's not an easy process. But from a community point of view, we work with the DSO, Developmental Services. We work with health and mental health services to identify priority people who are often transitioning from really poor environments into this environment. So I know it's not a simple or easy answer, 1, 2, 3, and if I check off all these boxes, it's perfect and I get in. It's really an iterative process and a conversation.
Okay, thank you. Brian, can you speak about the rent? What do you think the rent would be in this building? If it's,
like I said, so tenants will pay anywhere from $497, which is the allowable ODSP provision for rent, up to average market rent. I don't see us, from our perspective, we expect that 50% of the tenants will be on ODSP. We'll have another 30% who are rent to income range, probably at 80% or lower, and the rest, some may at maximum 20% paying average market rent. But it's early in the process to see what that plays out. Part of it depends on how many units we're able to build. Again, the efficiencies affect so much of this. So if we're reducing any of our efficiency and supports and systems, then again, the rent will have to make up for it. The tenants will be paying a greater amount. So if we can increase the number of units, we can maximize the floor plate, we can create the best possible outcome from a affordable point of view. Now, the quality of every unit is identical. It's all high grade. We've had ministers and councillors walk through our building and offer to move in because it's that kind of quality. It's larger than your average condo being built right now, mostly because we know people with disabilities have equipment and support needs and staff in their space, where you and I just have our friends over. They have to have all those other things. So we build with a little more space. We provide for visitability, so you can have someone with a wheelchair come in. So circle turn space in all the units is available. And then a number of the units are even larger because of the accessibility requirements, including things like ceiling lifts and other things that get built into the building.
Okay. Next question was about balconies. Are balconies part of the design?
So there aren't on the, I think on the fourth floor, and this Sal will be able to answer better. I think on the fourth floor, there's possibility to have some units with balconies. Generally, balconies are a risk from our perspective, and also create an environmental challenge in the sense of controlling the heat and making the building affordable. So we generally don't build balconies because we don't want to be dealing with having to fight over what's on the balcony or what's being thrown off the balcony. We also don't want people just opening up and sliding the door open and leaving air and heat, and it's very costly. So a lot of the building is built with a lot of efficiencies on those things. We look for highest value mechanical systems to keep the building running efficiently and controlled, so a central control system, but also we don't go crazy and overspend. So we're not trying to be LEED certified because the certification may drive us to spend money on things that really won't provide value, but we do try to become very high efficiency. And we are required to beat by 20% the 2015, someone can correct me, standards. Sal probably knows better than I. So Sal, I don't know if you want to speak to if there are balconies on the fourth
Sure,
floor.
thank you, Brian. Just briefly, I think the best example of building without balconies that's residential is right behind Brian, actually. And we're very proud of that building. We did that. So it has no balconies. It certainly looks residential. And the idea of balconies these days is becoming a very difficult challenge. In 2023, the new code is going to almost make it impossible to do balconies because of the amount of energy that gets, the balcony is cold outside and the concrete is connected to the inside. So the first 2 feet of the building is cold and you get condensation there. Old buildings that don't have great circulation, you get mold buildup both there and at the ceiling and in the floor, on your floor. So it's called thermal bridging. That's going to disappear very soon. And it's a good thing. So we're happy to do, but we think we can do residential buildings that look excellent and still feel residential, because there is a feel to a residential building, and it can be accomplished without it. And as Brian mentioned, the residents of the building don't require it. They would prefer not to have things stored on the balcony and keep a nice clean neighborhood look still. So I think it works well. They don't need them, and it's generally going to be a problem in the future.
Thank you. The next question is here, will existing belt line behind the present building be touched? I guess, are we going to encroach on the belt line?
No, we won't. I mean, the design will make sure it doesn't, and connectivity and improvement of everything to do with the belt line is critical to city staff, and they made that clear to us.
Okay, thank you. Brian, I guess the next question for you from Georgia. She's asking if somebody wants to apply for housing at Reena, what should they do?
So I think Sharon will load up a contact email address for you, and you can always email info@reena.org. But again, what ultimately will happen at this time, we're really, just to give you context, if any of you run a business, our overhead and admin is 7.4%. So we run thin. We don't have a lot of staff sitting around. And so we will take names, we will keep you informed, but the process for application won't happen till we know what the building looks like, the final number of units, the sizes, and then we will put out a public request to do a self-assessment. It's an online tool that we've developed and people process and prepare their own submission and readiness, and go through a process of self-evaluation to see if they're ready to apply and move in. Some people will be coming through either through the city itself, through health services or other partners who are moving in. But from Reena direct, the units that we're going to assign to our services, you can connect with us and leave your name, and we'll make sure you get on that list.
Thank you. I'm just going to read a question here, but maybe you want to clarify it. Why were applications to Lou Fruitman residents not given opportunity to have intake interviews as promised? Can those applications be given priority for Elmridge if they wish to be considered?
So that's Marcia, thank you. Of course, people who are already either at RCR list or the Reena Community Residence, the first building we built, or at our Clark Lou Fruitman building, those people will be contacted. There is no prioritization. We do not prioritize people based on when they applied. It's fit, and it's not easy. And so, yes, people will be assessed or looked at. In terms of why someone hasn't been interviewed yet, so through the staff has been extended in terms of the work they're doing on COVID. Most of their work has been consumed, but we have started to review applicants. We are interviewing those that we felt were ready in a position. Second round of interviews and referrals are starting now. So we're slowly building up the Lou Fruitman residents. Like I said, there are only 32 of the 136 people who've moved in. So we're not trying to get rent as quickly as possible. We want to create a community, and it's not easy. And I really appreciate how challenging it is to get a letter, again, because we have over 150 people interested, that just says, okay, hold on, we're not there yet. I don't believe it was a rejection letter in your case, but it was a hold on, just wait, we're not there yet. So.
Was there, Brian, was there initially a talk about having two buildings in that location? Because there's somebody wanted a clarification there.
No,
No,
so there
just
are
one.
there are two houses on the site. One is a small bungalow, and the other is a 2-story, 14-bedroom supported living house that we've been operating for 15 years there. So there are two properties, 155 and 165 Elmridge, that this make up this site. So, but it's only one project we're doing. If you have land, if anybody has some, or if you're willing to build, we're willing to work with you and teach you what we have. But it's unfortunately, we only have one small site to work with at this time.
Next question is about the length of construction and whether any considerations will be done, will be given to the neighbors in terms of the noise of the whole construction process.
Yeah, I don't know, Adam, you want to take that?
So, yeah, I mean, part of the site plan process and the zoning process typically will include what's called a construction management plan. The construction timing, the times of day, all of those types of issues, weekends, evenings, early morning starts and the like, all of those are worked on through a construction management plan with the city staff, with the councillor's office, and community members who are most affected by it. So that will definitely happen later on in the process, and will be an important part of the process.
I would add also that when we work with whoever's building with us, we're very clear that we are part of this community. So for us, it's really important to be attentive to that relationship, and because while they're constructing for a year and a bit or whatever time it takes, we're there permanently. We're going to be in this community for a long time, and we want to be good neighbors. So again, the guidelines we give as an organization are very clear about trying to be proactive and stay within the guidelines that are established by the city. And we've had, again, our other two builds, no issues with the neighbors in terms of complaints or notices to the city. So appreciate that, because I've lived beside construction, and the 4:30 or 5:30 guys who come early to do their stuff, or the guys who like to come on the weekend because they can be noisy. So
Was there any a slide about the average square footage, or there's a question about the square footage? I thought maybe there was a slide. We will populate the slide to everyone who attended today. But if you remember, maybe from the top of your head, the average square footage
of units.
yeah,
So we have
from one
we have
one bedroom
we have 7 types of units, everything from a studio right through to 4-bedroom. I don't know, Sal, what the studio size, average studio size, but our average 1-bedroom is in the range of 740. I think, again, we tend to be larger than most.
Brian, you're right. The average unit size now for a condo 1-bedroom is 540 square feet, sometimes smaller. We're at around the 700 and a bit on a 1-bedroom. On a 2-bedroom, average condo sizes now are around the 700 square foot mark. We're probably more in the neighborhood, if you're averaging everything, in the 900 square feet. And when you get to a 3-bedroom, they're usually market condos are usually around, we're doing them, unfortunately, and I hate to, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, we're doing them at 850 square foot 3-bedrooms. It's hard to live in. But these 3-bedrooms will be more like 1,100 square feet. So you can see there's a good 20% jump in almost every one of the units in terms of size. And it has to do with exactly what Brian was mentioning. There's accessibility requirements for turning wheelchairs or anything else that has to be brought in. Bathrooms are larger, but also we also leave a little more space. So living room is not 10 feet wide, it's 11 feet wide, so they can get a space between a table and a wall and a unit that's against the wall.
Next question about estimated time of start of construction. And
Do you want me
length.
to try that, Brian, as well?
Yeah,
It's very much dependent on approvals. It is really where I'd like to start. So I could guess that if we can get approvals done in, and I could be very hopeful and say if we can get all of our documentation ready and reports and everything and be close in 6 months to getting approvals, then we would not really start the drawings to build it until we have a very good understanding. And those drawings take about 4 months to do. So now we're already at 10 months. By the time we get a contractor on board, we're talking another few months to get in the ground. So you're probably a year before you could ever get close to being in the ground as the minimum. And to build a building like this is usually around 18 months to 20, somewhere in that neighborhood. It all depends on when we start.
The next question is about the height from Nick. He says, in the zoning area, the site is currently located, and according to the city, has the as of right of 37 meters. Beside it is the west is 24 meters, and only the one zone north of Elmridge directly above your lots is higher at 58 meters. But how do you feel that this height request is in line with the existing zoning allowance? And have you considered how the height would propose a concern for residents directly south of Fairleigh Crescent?
So I can try and answer this and give you a bit of the background of what we looked at. So we're well aware of the existing as of right zoning in the area, which, you know, in and of itself calls for higher buildings than exist on the site and on the south side of the street. Many of those buildings, Sal had mentioned before, were built with a much larger floor plate than what we're proposing. This is a very slim floor plate in terms of its design. And in that design, the shadowing from the building, I think there's a question about that as well, is pretty quick moving and has very little impact even on the areas to the north where there's other high-rise buildings. To the south, there will not be any adverse shadowing whatsoever, which is why even historically, the northern area was designated as apartments and the southern area neighborhoods, because that fact is simply the way the sun rises and sets. So We won't have any adverse shadowing on the areas to the south. We've taken care to create setbacks from our tower portion, from the green space, which is then separated from the residential areas to the south. But all important questions that we've looked at, our planning consultants have looked at, our architects have looked at, and city planning staff is now considering and looking at. And, you know, if we get comments back that require any further revisions, we're going to take that into account. So we thank you for that question.
I don't see any more questions in the chat, at least at this point.
We will be connecting again, I'm confident. The city will be reaching out and sharing information as they review, and we really invite people to give input. It's a wonderful feeling we've had in working with this community. We get a very warm embrace. Now, some of you are finding it hard to reach your arms around because we're too big, as the last question said, but I know it's a warm embrace anyways. So I really appreciate the sort of engagement, the conversation, and it's an open conversation. We're really looking forward to feedback, thoughts, and I know, having read some of the comments and knowing some of the people who are in the neighborhood who have family looking for place, and even the context of the discussion you saw with Marsha and others who are involved with Reena, there's just not enough. There just isn't, and we need it now. There's no time to waste in terms of letting people live without a proper home. So appreciate any support and certainly any input. We're here for that purpose. We have, our agenda is very straightforward. We want to provide supportive housing for the community and be there for a long time for people. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. As Sharon had indicated, we will be sending out the slides and the recording to everyone who registered. If you have any specific questions, please feel free to send an email to info@reena.org. And with that, I thank everybody very much. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll consider the meeting closed. Thank you.